Hi, everyone. I'm calling this meeting to order at 4:32 p.m. Thank you all for attending. I'll start off with a territorial management, and then we'll go into roll call and other aspects in the agenda. So we respectfully acknowledge that the SFSS is located on the traditional and ceded territories of the Coast Salish peoples, including the Musqueam, Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, Coquitlam, and Katzie nations. Unceded means that these territories have never been handed over, sold, or given up by these nations, and that we're currently situated on occupied territories. I start with roll call of attendance. I myself, and then with the roll call, please give your name, access needs, name, pronouns, and access needs. Access needs can be anything you need to allow you to engage more in the meeting or attend, or if you have to leave early, or if you have any other like background noise or any other kind of thing that could make it a challenge for you to be involved with the meeting today. Okay, so first person, my name's Corbett, pronouns are he, him, his, and access needs are met. I am the chair of this committee. VP Events and Student Affairs.
Hi, my name is Jess. My pronouns are she, her, hers. And for my access needs, I'm going to have my camera off today and I'll be mostly using the chat. My mental health has been really bad and my engagement has been super low, so I'm going to try my best to be present today.
Okay, thank you, Jess. VP Equity and Sustainability.
Hey everyone, my name is Marie. My pronouns are she, her, hers. My access needs are met for now, but I will never mind. I can't speak today. I have to leave at 5:30, but that's about it for me.
Okay, thank you. Gender, Sexuality, Women's Studies, counselor.
Hey everyone, my name is Devin, she, her, hers pronouns, and my access needs are met other than I have to leave at 5:30 as well because I have to go to the oversight committee meeting.
Okay, thank you. Sustainability, NG, counselor.
Hi, my name is Mohammed Al-Shabul. My pronouns are he, him, his. My accessibility needs are I'm probably going to keep my camera off because I took my COVID vaccine yesterday and it's kicking my ass and I kind of look like shit. So yeah, it's been rough.
Yeah, thank you for letting us know. Yeah, I've got mine scheduled for the 21st. So looking, I don't know if I'm looking forward to finally getting it, but I'm also not looking forward to side effects. Society staff, operations organizer Aisha is not here, and I don't believe our administrative assistant is here as well. Policy, research, and community affairs coordinator.
Hi everyone, my name is Billy. Pronouns she, her, hers. Accessibility needs met. I won't be that engaging. It's my first meeting, so I'll just be doing a lot of observation and providing support if necessary. Thank you.
Thanks. And just for everyone's knowledge, Betty is our new policy and research and community affairs coordinator. It's a new position branched off from the older CRPC, which stood for, sorry, I'm always bad with remembering this particular one. Campaigns, research, and policy coordinator, or campaigns, policy, and research coordinator. I always get those two mixed up, switched around. That role's been switched into pulled into two. One's more focused on the policy and research side, and the other one is focused more on campaigns support. So that one is actually being still worked on in the hiring process. So welcome, Betty, and you will be one of our main staff support, I believe, for this committee as well, because we do a lot of policy work. Okay, great. Next is consent agenda. 4.1, be resolved to adopt the consent agenda by unanimous consent. Do I have a mover?
Jess moves.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder?
Marie.
Thank you, Marie. Any we'll go into discussion. Any objection to the items in this in the consent agenda? Actually, I do want to make my own thing. Actually, I do want to remove, pull out and actually end up striking the matters rising from the minutes, because I realized when I forwarded the agenda to you, it did not forward the link that had the actual minutes. So you couldn't actually read them to be able to raise issues on them. And these minutes are 400 pages long, because it was from a meeting specifically where we passed a whole bunch of policies, I think issues policies. So I want us to have the proper opportunity to actually review those minutes before we approve them. So yeah, so I will, what we'll do is I object to 4.11 matters rising from the minutes from being in the consent agenda, and like to move it out to be added as 5.1. Actually, yeah, to be moved out, and then we'll get into it for as part of adoption of the agenda, I guess. Yeah. And yeah, and then I'll tackle an adoption agenda. Okay. That doesn't necessarily need any kind of move or second or anything, because it's just an objection. And because of that, there is nothing else in the consent agenda, so we can basically stop that and move on to 5.1, adoption of the agenda. Motion reads, be resolved to adopt the agenda as presented. This now would include the separate section for matters rising from the minutes. Do I have a mover?
Jess moves.
Do I have a seconder?
I can second, but I'd also like to make a change, or I want to withdraw the motion I accidentally submitted to this committee instead of the Vancouver campus committee or discussion items.
Sure. We'll get into that once we get into the discussion part.
Cool.
Okay.
But I can second.
So right now we're just, yeah, thank you. Thank you, Devin, for seconding. Okay, discussion. Please list yourself if you would like to make any changes to the agenda. Go ahead, Devin.
Yeah, I would like to remove the discussion item 8.1, as I meant to submit that to the Vancouver campus committee meeting, and I just mixed up my email, so it's not meant for this meeting.
Okay, thank you. And I would also like to remove the item for matters rising from the minutes, Governor Committee Minutes Motion, Governor Gov 2021-07/13. Because we, for basically removing striking the minutes from April 21st, because as I mentioned earlier, that link was not sent out to members, the committee members, so there's no way for them to prepare that aspect for this meeting. Is there any other listing of any other motions to be changed or added or removed? Seeing none, I will do this in batch altogether. So, yeah, I have to amend the agenda. So, I move to. Let me think. Sorry, it's been a while since I've had to do this section of the agenda changes. So we've moved into. So we did the motion to adopt the agenda. We've put two different motions in the agenda. So thank you. That to work it out mentally. So I move to amend the agenda to strike the approving the minutes from governance April 21st, 2021, and remove to strike discussion item 8.1. Do I have a mover? Right, I move that. Do I have a seconder?
Marie.
Marie, thank you. Any discussion? No, seeing no discussion, move to a vote. All in favor seeking unanimous consent. If you would like to dissent or abstain, please use the Zoom raise hand feature, and I will call on you to list your vote. Seeing no abstentions or dissent. This carries unanimously. Now back to the main motion. Be it resolved to adopt the agenda as amended. Since we already have a mover seconder, I can go straight to a vote. Or is there any other discussion on that item? Nope. Seeing that none, so I will go to seeking unanimous consent. Again, if you would like to vote against or abstain, please use this raise hand feature on Zoom to, and I will call on you to list your vote. Seeing none, this passes unanimously. Thank you. Now moving on to 6.1 presentation, Governance Committee Introduction Year and Year-end Review. Okay, I was hoping Gabe would be here because he was the chair last year, so he can go through a lot of what happened, but honestly, significant amounts happened. And I'll do a quick introduction of the committee, and give me 1 minute, I'm going to bring up the policy specifically for this committee and share that on the screen. So everyone should be able to see this, I believe. Okay, so this is Standing Order 5, Governance Committee. This is the policies related to what on paper, what the Governance Committee is about. So I'll go through that, and then we'll have more of a conversation on what this stuff on paper looks like in practice. So the council shall maintain a governance committee as a standing committee. I am set as the chair. The VP Internal and Organizational Development. It's actually, I think, listed in our bylaws. It is listed in our bylaws as whatever, having either been chair of the committee or equivalent chair if it's a different title. As always, the president is the ex officio member. So basically that means is they sit on all committees and they can count for court's forum and voting and stuff, but they not, but they don't necessarily have to attend every meeting, whereas everyone else needs to, or else they can, and if you miss too many meetings in a row without regrets that have been passed by the committee, then you get kicked out of the committee. You're viewed as abandoned your chair. It also has 4 counselors, and the non-voting person is policy research coordinator. We'll have to update that policy for the proper title, but generally that was original title for us. I think we added on the community affairs thing fairly late in the process. Terms of reference means basically what does it do? So we review proposals and make recommendations to amend, add, or delete sections of the Society's constitution, bylaws, and policies. Now, we can't pass these ourselves. That's only a power of, depending on what you want to do. If it's a constitution or bylaw change, that can only be done by our membership through referendum or an annual or special general meeting. As happened last October at our AGM last year, we passed a number of bylaw amendments, and we did try in the spring to pass a number of other bylaw amendments and additions, but unfortunately we didn't get enough. There's not enough people voted, so quorum wasn't met, even though the votes themselves were fairly, like the motions themselves had well enough yes votes for them. So we might try that again in this year, or we should try them again this year. We also review appeals or questions regarding the interpretation and application of the Society's constitution, bylaws, and policies, except those specifically reserved for other committees of the Society. So this basically means, like, if someone complains about, say, application of the accessibility committee, we wouldn't necessarily touch that, because the accessibility committee would be able to explain its own interpretation of these rules. But things for bylaws, constitutions, and most other policies, including administrative policies, council policies, elections policies, all that stuff, that would all be valid. We inform council of any legislative changes that impact the activities of SFS. So that could be things like improvements or changes to the Societies Act, changes to University Act. Those are two big ones, but also could be changes to other areas that affect the society, like WorkSafe BC type, whatever legislation involves WorkSafe BC, or changes, say, bullying and harassment, or any number of other areas. So it's our responsibility to kind of keep up on, provincial and potentially even federal legislation changes that could impact us. So that doesn't mean we all have to be watching question hour or question period in the legislature, but it'd be good to check every once in a while to see what's on the dock. If there's anything this year coming up that we think is important. We meet in person or electronically as required, and at the call of the chair, and the chair may call a meeting where a notice of 3 working days has been provided. The committee may strike subcommittees in order to help conduct the business of the committee. So in this case, we could create a subcommittee if we found that we needed regular support on specific or certain types of things were constantly coming up in front of this committee, but you didn't need everyone to be working on it. We could have a subcommittee created to handle that. One example of a subcommittee elsewhere is the Human Resources and Personnel Committee, and that's a subcommittee of the Executive Committee, and they handle HR issues. Not everyone on the committee is also from the Executive Committee. There's additional person on it. So subcommittees their membership is not fully connected to it, but they do report back to their parent committee, if you want to look at it that way. I don't know if we'll need one any of this year, but we'll find out. Relevant policies. So members of the committee, we should be familiar with the following: the Constitution, the bylaws, our strategic plan, Societies Act of BC, University Act of BC, SFSS elections, referendum policies, council policies, administrative policies, and all other policies of the society. So basically, we have to learn everything. It's a lot of reading. It's hundreds and hundreds of pages, but it is very important if you want to be effective in this committee, and for us to be able to make effective changes, because there's so many policies made, and so many, especially have changed over the last year. We've run into small errors or small gaps where we realized, we missed a scenario that has come up that we'll have to add to policy, or we still haven't. There's certain policies the list is still under review that actually haven't been reviewed yet. So it's if you don't like reading policy or don't enjoy looking at it, then this is going to be a difficult committee for you, unfortunately. But this is also one of our core committees, and it's really important because, as Marie has mentioned multiple times, policy is power. It's how we as a council in the committee and stuff, how we direct changes in the society. Policy affects finances. It affects like where finances go. It affects where, like, even like bylaws affect who our members are, but what I'm finding out is policy also can affect, like, okay, what aspects of the student society are paying fees and whatnot, how much and what way. The whole idea of like part-time students and stuff is not being where we charge fees to students who are taking 4 credits or more is something that we set, apparently, and this is something I only recently learned. It's not listed in it's listed in our policies, but it's not. We never understood the history of it. And I'm actually going back back to the 1970s to understand this stuff. So it's a lot of reading, and it's quite this committee can be quite a bit of work. Anyways, sorry, I'm going off track. Get back into the policy itself. So governance is, we strive for consensus, but when there's no consensus, then we do a simple majority vote. Committee shall take into consideration, respect Indigenous forms of governance, and recognize how often other forms of governance overrule Indigenous ways of knowing, especially on occupied stolen territories. This is primarily just to realize that we have a colonial system and a structure. Last year we've tried to reduce that impact, and that we should learn about other types of governance structure, especially Indigenous. I believe that we will, and this language is actually in multiple policies related to committees. I think in the future we will have almost like a governance-based dev session around what Indigenous forms of governance look like and ways of knowing. When the committee takes into account Indigenous forms of governance, the committee shall consider other aspects and ways of knowing in order to properly support this decision-making process, which can include inviting Indigenous elders of the territories and asking for advice or support in decision-making processes, find ways to include Indigenous forms of governance, like talking circles, transparency process, and community engagement. And this to me is especially important, especially when if we want to be passing or make recommendations for, say, more issues policies related to supporting Indigenous students or in issues being raised by the Indigenous community, that we don't just do it from the sense of this committee, but we invite the proper people to be involved in giving us advice and guidance so that we can also then make recommendations and guidance on changes and improvements. So that's just what it says on paper. So what does this look like, this committee look like in practice? Well, give me 1 minute. I'm going to see if I can find, I think Gabe created a very lengthy exit report for this committee. So if you want to take like a 5-minute break to grab some water and stuff, or a snack or anything else, let me know. Go ahead. And I'm just gonna kill the share and then find the document and come back. Welcome back, everyone. So just do a thumbs up or something, emote for the people with no camera on, maybe, so I know if you're back or not. Devin, great. Jess, you're here, I know, because you sent me a message. Mohammed, we can give him like a minute or so just in case. What I'll do is I'll just screen share. Oh, you're here, great, thank you. So I couldn't find specifically extra report for the committee, but I did, because it was a kind of a brand new thing that created last year, at the end of last year. So not everyone has one in, but I did look at Gabe's extra report for his position because he was chair of governance last year. So, and it's quite a lot. So fundamentally, one of the first things the governance committee did was review the governance structure of the SFSS. They worked with the exec committee to review the administrative restructuring. They kind of did it all at once because that was like literally was moved at the first board meeting last year, and we got that completed within the first 6 weeks. So by the middle of June, we approved a new governance structure, which moved from what was called the Carver model or policy governance that was adopted in 2015. By my board, from when I was first time I was on the SFSS board, and we moved away from that to what we called basically a governance administrative hybrid model, where the executive committee, the Carver model put this big wall up between governance and operations, where the board focused only on governance, which was like long-term planning, strategic planning, that kind of stuff, and policy. Oversight, and the operational work, including from some policies as well as some operational policies, as well as standard operating procedures and a bunch of other stuff, hiring and such, was all handled by the unelected administrators. And over time, when we reviewed this period, we've noticed that board members became less and less knowledgeable of how the society ran, what was going on in society. There was situations where a board member would find out about a change that had affected a clubs or student unions, well after it had been done. And so they would also sometimes get the heat for this because they're the ones supposed to oversee the society, but they didn't even know what was going on in their own organization. This led to a significant restructuring of the administration, which went from 7 full-time administrators, including the executive director, down to effectively after basically down to 2, and then 1 person finishes contract at the end of the summer. And then we went and redid the administrative rules to only include the building manager to manage the sub, the board organizer, and the operations organizer. It took quite a while to get those last 2 roles hired. So in the meantime, we ended up hiring a transition manager to help us transition the society from this other model where a lot of staff only knew how to work in that model to this newer administrative one where the executives and also the council, now council at large, had oversight on operations work and making decisions on, who would get hired, what positions get hired and such, as well as some of the day-to-day decisions being made with the student union building, made with policy change, with club changes, policy changes, all that stuff. So it just became much more accountability got put more onto, and responsibility got put more onto the elected student leaders. And then there was like a layered system of powers that, everyone had, like council, the members have all this power, but it's only exercised during periods of the year at members' meetings. Then it became council or board at the time would have a lot of power, and then in between the meetings, but only at their meetings, and then in between the meetings, execs would have power, and just kind of went from there. I can share that document with everyone later with the whole rationale for making this significant change, because we presented it to board for approval ahead of time. After that was done, our next step was to do bylaw review. And that was where, and again, the governance committee was heavily involved in this because it is their bread and butter. We knew that the Societies Act had changed in 2016, and that by 2018 we were supposed to have transitioned over to this new model, this new act, but the society hadn't actually finished that. They had tried in 2016, but that failed. I know because I ran the counter campaign that sunk that activity, that campaign, because I really didn't like the changes they were making. With help from council members, the council chair and council, and a bunch of other students, we were quickly able to get the no vote out within 3 or 4 days before the vote, which was crazy. It was my first time ever trying to organize anything from a campaign perspective, and it was scary as hell. So Gabe as chair, he's spearheaded the efforts to reform our bylaws to put more power back into the hands of students and decentralize power from our unrepresentative board to a more representative council. And we ensured council was involved in this process. There was a working group, bylaw reform working group, that had members of council as well as some board members and executives. And we presented our recommendations to both council and the board, and got feedback from a number of different people, positive and negatives. And in the end, we ended up presenting this to the membership at the annual general meeting last October, and they passed it with a very high yes vote. 90%, over 90% voting in favor. He was also, this is review of policies. We also, because we changed our bylaws, policies come from restrictions based on our bylaws, as well as restrictions or requirements in legislation. So for instance, we have to have operational policies around, yes, this Gabe's exit report. It has policy, sorry, change of thought. So for instance, we have the Employment Standards Act has various requirements for when you employ people. And so we have to make sure our policies are in line with the Act, as well as the labor code because we also have employees that are under the union, are unionized. We have a collective agreement. So we have various policies that have to respect the legislation as well as our bylaws. So, and we have other types of policies like how our elections are run, how some of our responsibilities, like how council members are compensated through their stipends, a bunch of other things. And so they're all broken down on the SFSS website under our documents for both in basic two big categories. One is governance policies, and one is administrative policies. So because we changed our bylaws, we had to update our policies to take into account this new executive positions and to a new board of governors board of directors that was called council, that was starting in May 1st. And so we had to basically do all of them, go through everyone from operations policies to governance policies to see what needs. In some cases it was just like swapping out board for council, but a lot of times it was also adding new, saying, okay, this new position is actually responsible now for this area of policies or these reporting structures. There was, and that's partially why, if you look through some of the minutes for governance committee minutes last year, you'll see some documents that have like 400 plus pages, because we literally went read and did approved all of them in one big batch. The downside of that is we missed little things. We made a lot of changes over, but there was missing there's some grammar issues or some typo issues, some copy paste issues. Some policy didn't get reviewed in time, and so they actually still need to be updated. And so that's kind of I think going to be a bigger amount of work we do this year, is just going through and cleaning up a lot of those little things that got missed the first time around. Issues policies, as governance chair, he worked on issues policies, and issues policy and a development plan. Issues policies are stances that we take as kind of like standing orders for the stances society takes. So what do we stand on? Indigenous rights, where do we stand on student rights, where do we stand on broader student rights, where do we stand on living wage, student living wage, things like that. And there's a whole bunch of them also online that we will all need to review, because we need to make sure that they are up to date, that they're effective, that we can make campaigns and stuff from them to push for issues and changes. Number of other information you can read through on if you want on your own time, not necessarily related to governance directly. So effectively, just the easy way to sum this up is last year was crazy busy for governance. We literally, the way I've explained it to a lot of people is we basically relayed the foundation for the SFSS, with the goal of making it more, it pretty much was, Marie, just have a chat with Gabe around kind of how much work it was for him. The goal was to make the society more democratic, more representative, more building back student power, and in all areas of the society, because fundamentally the board of directors, my apologies, I was on board of governors last year, so it's still stuck in my head, that terminology, that we are responsible for, collectively we are responsible for the society as a whole, the good and the bad for it. But the way it had been changed is that the board of directors had no idea what their society was going on, so how can they be responsible for something or do oversight for something they didn't know about? And so we don't necessarily have to do everything as counselors, but we kind of have to know everything, is a way I like to look at it. And governance is a core aspect of what we need to know and do. So that's a lot. Do you have any questions, or is there anything I can be glossed over too much, or you want me to go over again? Okay, Jess?
I think if we're trying to also include and put at the forefront Indigenous governance, we each need to take our own time out of these meetings to learn up on that. But I was wondering, Corbett, if you could go find someone, or if BD or if Ella could find someone to do sort of like a teach-in on Indigenous ways of knowing and Indigenous governance and how we can change our policies to put those in line, if that's possible.
Yeah, I agree that I think that is important, and we can definitely do that. I can chat with BD and Ella and figure out the best way to do that for us, to get information back to us. Yeah, Marie, that's also really good. We have a teach-in for dev session on the 4th of August. So we have something small there too. Yeah, that makes sense. Any other questions? Yeah, and well, I think we'll get into it as a part of the discussion period after this, but because that was just more like a year in review of what happened last year and the general overview of the committee itself. No? Okay, just check my chat. Yeah, well, what said, don't worry, Jess said, don't worry, Corbs will keep you busy this year too. You also know you're keeping us busy, like you're gonna be involved in the business side because you're on this committee, right? So, yes, rip. Okay. What's the phrase? You played yourself? Okay, if there's nothing else, I'd like to move into new business, or like us to move into a new business. 7.1, appointment of vice chair, submitted by myself. The motion reads, whereas the chair will not always be able to attend a meeting due to an unexpected situation, whereas it is important for the committee to have a vice chair to take over the chairing duties in case of such a situation, be resolved that the governance committee appoint X as vice chair of the committee. Do I have a mover?
Marie.
Do I have a seconder?
Devin.
Thank you, Devin. Okay, discussion. As kind of the motion says, it's a good idea to have a vice chair, a dedicated person to handle situation where the chair cannot attend either through illness, through emergencies, or through some other kind of situation. Because this committee will probably be a bit busy, personally, I might even want to request the vice chair, for some practice for chairing to take over either in the middle of the meeting or say for the discussion part or for a whole meeting itself where I back them, support them. So if you're looking for practice in chairing, I would encourage you to run for this position, this seat. If not, yeah. Or if you just want to make sure these meetings always happen in some form, you can also run. There's be lots of reasons why you want to run in this exciting experience of an opportunity of being a vice chair. Any other one? Please, yeah, list. Go ahead, Marie.
I would like to put Deb's name forward, and she totally can reject if she wants, but I think just like she knows how to chair so well. And she kind of has displayed like how good she is at doing it. So like on, when Gabe's Wi-Fi is acting out and he has to run to this where Deb can just like hop in. Yeah, I don't foresee like Corbett not being here usually, which is gonna be good. But I
don't know. I'm kind of old, so.
Honestly, I probably have to take tips from freaking Dev for Robert's rules, because damn, don't elect me in.
So, Dev, would you accept the nomination or reject it?
Yeah, I'll accept the nomination. Thank you so much, Marie.
I'll do another round. Is there anyone who would like to nominate themselves or somebody else for vice chair? Seeing nothing, I'll do another third round. If anyone, please nominate yourself or somebody else if you'd like to. Seeing no additional nominations, this will go to Devin. So I will move to amend the agenda to say, to replace X with Devin Butterworth or Buttersworth? Butterworth. Thank you. Do I have a seconder?
Marie.
Thank you, Marie. All in favor of this amendment, seeking unanimous consent? Oh, wait, actually, sorry, my apologies. Discussion? Any concerns of switching this out, or if there's any? No? Okay, so I move to vote. All in favor, seeking unanimous consent. If you would like to abstain or dissent, please use the Zoom raise hand feature, and I will call on you to list your vote. Seeing no dissent or abstentions requests, this carries unanimously. Now we'll move back on the main motion, and I'll read it out again. Whereas the chair will not always be able to attend a meeting due to an unexpected situation, whereas it is important for the committee to have a vice chair to take over the chairing duties in case of such a situation, be it resolved that the governance committee appoint Devin Butterworth as vice chair of the committee. Okay, any further discussion? Seeing no discussion, I'll go to a vote. Seeking unanimous consent. Sorry, all in favor is seeking unanimous consent. If you want to dissent or abstain, please use the raise hand feature in Zoom, and I will call on you to list your vote. Seeing no abstentions or dissent, this carries unanimously. Thank you. Congratulations, Devin, for being nominated or appointed vice chair. So moving on to 7.1, Council and Committee Voting Tool. I'll read the motion. It's submitted by myself. I'll read the motion. Whereas it is required that for the SFS to track and record votes of council and committee members on motions, whereas the current process of roll call, seeking unanimous consent, and other voting measures could be better handled through a dedicated voting tool. Resolved that the governance committee strikes a working group to search for suitable voting tools and report back to the committee with recommendations. Do I have a mover?
Jess moves.
Thank you, Jess. Do I have a seconder?
Gabe.
Thank you, Gabe. So discussion. So since I submitted this one, I'll do the initial speaking on it. So yeah, it just basically, this got brought up a bit in our council Discord. And this has kind of been talked about on and off for quite a while. It was actually something that was kind of a follow-up from the board portal search group, working group that finished their working report, did it back to the board of directors in the previous term. But that we still need, we did that search. We went through a lot of software to try to find some kind of tool that would support board meetings more online and had a better tracking and a bunch of other things. At the end of the day, we found that the tools out there were not flexible or not designed for our particular style of meetings, which much more grassroots and a lot more, you know, some of the tools wouldn't even allow you to like amend the effectively. So if you amend the agenda, it was really hard to like amend that tool, the agenda in that tool. Or some had really weird voting methods or whatnot that didn't fit in with our style. So we realized it was best is just to use our current tools better and more concisely. But we still needed to find something that you could effectively use to track voting. Because Zoom poll, you know, you can vote yes or no. There is a report now that you can get, but you know, one, we don't know. We do know who would be voting, but you have to get the report after the meeting, and you have to go through and verify that all the people that voted are people that can actually vote, because it's for anyone who attended. It wasn't in the meeting, so that could be guests, it could be anyone else that it was part of, because our meetings are open to our membership. And so it would be a little weird to have motions that potentially passed, but we couldn't really be sure until it got verified later. And so just there was a lot of the like, and there was some issues on like the practicality of it all. So I pitched, so I wanted to bring to this committee, since this is kind of related to, this is a core relation to how we run meetings and our policies and stuff, work with committees, that we need to have we need to strike a working group to find something that we can then bring back to council for recommendation and adoption. So that's why I did this. Any question or any other people, please list yourself if you'd like to ask questions or make your comments. Marie, go ahead.
Yeah, I have kind of a question of like, because I guess we're tasked to like go find a system, right?
Yeah, it's we kind of a repeat of the board portal search, but this would be more for like a voting tool search that either is separate or maybe can integrate with Zoom or some other kind of meeting system.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So that being said, like, is there certain criteria that we need to be considering? Like, for instance, I know like transparency piece is very, very essential. So for our names and emails to be there and that sort of thing, and like who will have access to be voting? Like,
yes,
because even Zoom polls worry me, because anyone in there can vote and then you don't know who voted for what, right?
well, at the time, no. You could verify it later, but again, that's that extra weird step of like, technically we think the vote passed, but it's not really verified. We'd have to verify after every meeting, and that just, to me, just feels odd. And yes, you're correct. This working group would actually have to develop that list of criteria through consultation with council execs and others to make sure, you know, so we define like what do we mean by transparency, you know, also the requirements from our bylaws to track votes and things like that, and our policies to track votes, the different committees, and if there's anything accessibility needs for some of our members and other committees, right? It's got to be effective for everybody. Mohammed?
Yeah, I wanted to ask a couple of things actually regarding this. In that case, is given that we need to be transparent with whatever voting process we end up taking, is it also going? How do we also maintain privacy in that case? Like, is privacy a concern in this situation? Is it not even accounted for because we are councils? We're doing like everything that's recorded, everything that's you know, viewed to the public. So is that a concern? Is that not? How do we account for that? Yeah.
So yeah, thank you, Mohammed. Our voting is public, and our discussions as summarized in minutes is public, and our videos, I think, for our board meetings and a lot of our committee meetings are also now being uploaded to YouTube. So everything we say and do for the most part is public, public and knowledgeable, and the way we vote as well. So it's just, from my perspective, it's just we need to have having a tool that can control, like can have that all cleanly tracked, and so you could even look back through previous meetings and stuff, the records for voting records and stuff. So instead of having to potentially go through every single old minutes, we could even potentially have like a report that gets generated by this tool. the thing is, we won't really know that until we go out and see if what kind of tools are available for these kinds of, and that would meet our requirements or not. But that's why we need I think we need the group together, a working group to be created to then do that work. I also wanted that Ella, our board organizer, will be involved in this. Unfortunately, she's not here to talk about, but yeah, shoot. Okay, so both Devin and Marie, because it's 5:30, have to move off to different meetings. So that leaves us with Gabe and Mohammed and myself. And Jess, you're still here? So that still leaves us with 4 out of 6. So we still have quorum. Correct, Gabe?
How many members do you have? 5? Excluding me.
You don't count for quorum?
No, because I'm ex officio.
Oh, I thought
just
you did
the
count
added
for quorum.
bonus. So,
so you could vote, but you don't count for quorum. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
So we have 5 total people. And we
Quorum would be
have
3.
1, 2, 3. So we still have quorum. Okay, good. Go ahead, Mohammed.
Yeah, so the reason I asked about the privacy stuff is because like online it's a bit, more willy-nilly in terms of like recordings, in terms of everything being public. But I was asking because maybe we could incorporate a voting schematic or voting app, whatever we end up doing. And whenever we end up telling the working group, like, hey, you get to work on this, we can also incorporate it in person once we get back, so that it's both available. So it's available for use both online and offline. But I did want to have this discussion before we create a working group, so that we can basically direct them on the path that we need from the beginning, so that they are not lost from the start. So that's why I was asking.
No, I agree. Okay, yeah, no, I agree. Like, I fully expect we're going to have some aspect of hybrid meetings going forward when we're in person. So we're going to need, and honestly, I would still prefer everyone, even if you're in person, to still use this online tool to vote. If you're also from online aspect, there is definitely things like privacy concerns about where the data is being stored and such. And so we can definitely, that can be an aspect of the requirements that we find out where, like that's one thing we did request when we were doing the board portal search, was find out where the data is being held. And in some cases, many people had those in the States, which was, but it's still better than say a completely different country outside North America. And so, yeah, there is definitely privacy considerations in that sense. And that definitely can be part of the working group. I'm happy to be part of the working group to help guide this as well. And we don't have to have only members of this committee to be in it. It's just good to have a few to provide that guidance and that connection between the governance committee and the work in the working group. I actually do want to bring this to council for members to join as well. Sorry, I don't think I'm sharing my screen anymore. No. Okay, good. Who's leading it? I wanted I wanted Ella to do the main leading of it. Last time for the working group that worked on it was the previous board organizer, Gabriel, and a lot of the staff was administrative assistants. I think the working group would be well handled by having a mixture of admin staff, relevant admin staff, and council members, because they're all stakeholders in both the back end and the front end and the using of the system. And I would prefer that Ella take a lot of the lead on that. And I've talked to her already, and we've wanted to have this group created for a while, but this will help kind of make sure it happens, this motion. Any other questions? Or any other comments? If not, then I can move to a vote. Okay. I'll read out. Okay, I'll move to a vote. I'll read out the motion again. Whereas it is required for the SFS to track and record votes of council and committee members on motions, whereas the current process of roll call, seeking unanimous consent, and other voting measures could be better handled through a dedicated voting tool, be resolved that the Governance Committee strikes a working group to search for suitable voting tools and report back to the committee with recommendations. Oh, sorry, Gabe, a quick question. Do we have to name the chair of this working group as part of the motion? Okay,
Yeah.
so I need to amend the motion. I can be the chair. I'm happy to be the chair of it and then delegate a lot of work to Ella. And then who can then delegate after that. So sorry, I move to amend the motion to include a further be it resolved clause. Be resolved that VP Internal, Corbett Gildersleeve serve as chair of the working group. Do I have a seconder?
Jess seconds.
Thank you, Jess. Do I have any discussion? Any questions, comments, concerns? Seeing none, I'll move to a vote. All in favor, seeking unanimous consent, please use the Zoom raise hand feature if you'd like to abstain or dissent. And I'll call on you to list your vote. Seeing none, this amendment carries unanimously. We'll go back to the main motion. So do you need me to reread the motion for everyone after the amendment? Think we're good? Okay, it's pretty straightforward. Okay, so I'll go to a vote. Again, sorry. Sometimes my brain decides to think about something else. All in favor, seeking unanimous consent on the main motion. If you would like to dissent or abstain, please use the Zoom raise hand feature, and I will call on you to list your vote. Seeing no dissent or abstention requests, this carries unanimously. Thank you. Now moving on to new 8.1, which is Governance Committee Annual Plan. Okay, so this one is again submitted by myself. Especially every standing committee should have an annual plan of the things you want to work on. I'll email you out the last year's. I just have to get it from Gabe, and explain what we worked on, or we want to work on throughout the year. I think the next meeting we'll have a much more bigger discussion on what that actually will look like. But some of the core things would be a policy review and the development of a review schedule, standard operating procedure review, as also with the schedule, because there's a lot of it. We also have to develop how we review policies. How are they effective? If they're effective, who would be consulted with to determine if the policy is working or not. We also need to develop a kind of like a map of all the different groups that are responsible for reviewing different policies, and then talk to them to make sure that they review those relevant policies in the time they're given. So it's going to be kind of I kind of view this a bit of the organizational development side of things within this, so that from my role of developing like a system and a map and a schedule for society, so that we're not feeling overwhelmed thinking, oh, we have to go through 300 pages of policies in every year. I think that's probably not going to be feasible or good. We're also going to get requests throughout the year for governance reviews and stuff, so we need to put in space in our schedule to have like basically downtime in a way. We also have to think about, okay, is there going to be any requests from council for bylaw changes or policy changes that might have to go to referendum or through the AGM or SGM? So we have to leave some flexibility in our plan. For the people that have more experience, like Gabe, do you also have some ideas, or as a previous governance chair, is there things that you realized that you wanted to get done the last year that didn't get done that you'd like us to work on? Did Gabe go AFK? Well, I'll let, if anyone comes back, we can have that discussion. So yeah, my goal would be to have that made. Well, we'll have have an actual much more detailed discussion next meeting, with the goal of having it crafted and something to be approved of and submitted to council for approval. That then we can work on it in the fall and the spring. But do you hear my request, Gabe, earlier?
I didn't. I apologize. I had stepped out momentarily.
Not a problem. No problem. I just asked, as a previous governance chair, were there things that you wanted to get done last year that we didn't get done that you wanted us to carry on, or is there any continuing projects that I've forgotten about?
I'd have to think about that. Like, look at the previous annual plan. From what I remember, we established an annual plan at the beginning of the year, and for the most part, like, shockingly, we actually stuck to it. And most of the things that we set out in our annual plan, which was very, very ambitious, I should add, we got done by the end of the year. However, in the face of that, I think there's also just a really good opportunity to review all of the policies that we did do a major restructuring of last year, and just make sure that there aren't any like small oversights or errors or things that we might have missed in our big giant policy overhaul last year. I think you already touched on this, Corbett, but because of the major change in bylaws, we now also have a bunch of outdated standing operating procedures, or SOPs. So I know Beatty, that's a big priority that Beatty and I have talked about. What else? Have you already talked, Corbett, about the bylaw referenda that didn't pass the last time? But
I mentioned it a little bit. Just that as part of overview of during my given an overview of governance committee last year, that yes, we try to pass 4 bylaws. One was to clean up the bylaws, like reorganize and restructure, because we made some significant changes. 2 was sorry, I know 2. I submitted 2 and you submitted 2, Gabe. So what was the other one you submitted?
Mine was to restructure the way in which bylaws actually appear, like in the order in which they appear.
Okay.
Because, and it's really weird that we have to do a whole referendum to change it, but we can't actually change the sequence in which certain bylaws appear after one another without actually having students vote on that. Secondly, it was just a general bylaw. We called it a housekeeping referendum. There was just a bunch of small little inconsistencies, or just like small tiny amendments that needed to be made that it wouldn't make sense to do like in multiple different referenda. So we kind of compiled a ton of small amendments that needed to be made and put it all in one referendum, both of which I think are still priorities in trying to get passed either in a referendum or at the annual general meeting in the fall.
Okay. The 2 I submitted and tried to campaign for was, one was to put both a soft and a hard cap on administrative costs, wage costs, so that we didn't have what occurred previously, where the percentage of the budget that was going to administrative wages ballooned over like 3 years. It went from about 300 and something thousand to 800 and something thousand, and it was on track to be over $1 million. And that without having revenue match that, like increase in revenue. So it went from being like, I think 13% of the budget, almost 25%. It was going to be up to 33% in like a year from there. So it was was not good. And so what the bylaw I put in was something along the lines that just took off the head. My memory there's two kind of constraints. One was you could only pay admin's person so much going forward after the bylaw gets created, up to, and it was tied to the lowest wages we had in the society, which was generally staff wages, student staff wages. So the goal was to tie the highest to the lowest and bind it to the lowest. And so, and we're still worked within the amount we were paying them in now. And then there was a second one where the total pool amount of money in the budget that could go towards administrative wages was tied to a certain percentage of the revenue of SFS. So if they wanted to have a larger, in the future, if the board wanted to have more administration, they had to make sure that there was revenue to be able to pay for that administration costs. And yeah, and that was really about it. And then the fourth bylaw I put forward was a divestment bylaw to make sure that we stick within our current investment policies of no direct investment in fossil fuels and only like 5% of a company. We can have indirect investment as long as it was like no more than 5% of that organization's revenues come from fossil fuels. It was basically how it is in our policies, but our policies can change. And we worked with SAP 350 to try to make sure that that policy basically became a bylaw and a core restriction on the SFS, so the future SFS can just try to go after money and try to invest in whatever was making money, regardless of the impact it would have on our environment or our society. So all four of those had really high, you have to, for bylaws through referendums, you have to pass with a 2/3 or 75%, 2/3, right? And they got well past that, but unfortunately we didn't get the 5% turnout that we need to be able to have it count for quorum. So the question is, do we want to do that? We'll want to visit that this year. Just a matter, like try me in this year. And the question is, do we do it as a referendum or as a through an AGM or an SGM bylaw vote? Special resolution is called. That's something I think council will have to have a larger discussion on. We as a governance committee can make a recommendation, and that probably be we can have a further discussion in the future on that, and kind of go from there. But yeah, even still, the annual plan, we go back on the topic of the annual plan. We need to develop one and get it approved by council, ideally before the end of summer. And we'll also have to then decide like who's going to work on what and like who's going to be the lead on various projects throughout the year. So does that make sense for everybody? And I'll ask for Gabe to get, I'll send you the last year's plan so you can give an idea what it looks like and the kind of components to it. Because unfortunately I don't have one to show you with you right now. Any other questions? If not, then I can move on to the next item in the agenda. No, okay, we'll move into 9.1, adjournment, or adjournment 9.1 motion. We resolve to adjourn the meeting at 5:48 p.m. Do I have a mover?
Jess moves.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder?
Gabe.
Thank you, Gabe. Any discussion? Everyone wants to stay here, talk about policy more?
Always and forever.
Nobody's listening, so I'm assuming no, there's no discussion. So seeking, sorry, because I'll go to vote. All in favor, seeking unanimous consent. If you would like to dissent or abstain, please use the Zoom raise hand feature and I will call on you for to list your vote. Seeing none, that carries unanimously. Thank you all for attending this first meeting of the governance committee. It is going to be a big, impactful year here, and I look forward to working with all of you throughout the year. And hopefully, by the end of it, you'll probably love and hate policy. But that is the life of a student board member, I think, or student council member.
Thank you. Next time I'll be more.
Yeah, well, I'll chat with, and I'll reach out to you more, Betty, about stuff, and I'll probably ask for your help for like creating some schedules and stuff that we can actually even present to this committee. Oh, and I'm assuming everyone is somewhat still available for this time in 2 weeks. I'll double check, because I would like us to have a few regular meetings in summer and maybe have less near the end of August while everyone's in finals mode. And so, yeah, so I'm hoping to have another meeting in 2 weeks.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah. Okay, have a good rest of your evening, everyone.
Have a good rest.
Okay.
Nice to meet you all.
Okay, stop recording.